Class Mind Podcast. This is episode 2. I've got my guest here, David. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Andrew. Thanks for having me on, man. Excited to be here.
Of course. I'm so glad to have you. So why don't you take some moments to kind of introduce yourself and tell us where you're from?
Yeah, absolutely. So again, my name's David Zay. Co-founded a med tech, med device search firm, Integrity Medical Search, from Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised. A lot of you probably won't like this, but I'm a Buckeye. Graduated from Ohio State, so was in business.
Buckeyes.
Yeah, one of the most hated, but I love them. Went to college at Ohio State. Got out of college, snuck into the med device industry, and kind of made it my home. So right now in a position where we're about 9 months into our new company, and we're having a lot of success. Love it. Med tech, med device is a great growing industry, and partnering with the coolest startups changing gold standard of care is something that is super, super exciting. So yeah, that's kind of who we are, who I am.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, to kind of remind our viewers, my name is Andrew Denton. I founded Glia Health. We're a med device, I should say probably more closer to software as a sales company, software as a service company. But we also started our company 9 months ago. So it's kind of interesting. We're kind of growing together in this place.
Definitely.
So why don't you to kind of jump from that point, what type of business is Integrity Med Search, or what have you all been up to the past 9 months?
Yeah, good question. So we are a boutique retained search firm, which is a really fancy way to say we are very selective about the types of companies that we partner with. We really have found this niche of like kind of seed to Series A, Series B, Series C funded companies in that med tech space, in the med device space. And we really pride ourselves on delivering mission critical hires. So, VP of engineering, co-founder, principal engineer, vice president of sales, global vice president of sales, product marketing managers in a new territory, or OUS marketing managers, things like that. We're really interested in matching top level technology and top level devices with top tier talent, right? Because a lot of times it doesn't always work out like that. When you look at a lot of these companies who maybe don't use a search firm, they just simply don't have as wide of a net as we do. And they don't have the efficiencies in place to reach out and really sell their company. One of the things that we really pride ourselves on is ingratiating ourselves in your culture to feel who Glia Health is, right? And then I'm going to turn around and find 5 A players and sell them on why Glia is great. So that's kind of where our focus is. Again, those people that are going to drive the success of the organization. And ultimately, we're looking to partner with those types of companies because we want to grow with them. Just like, Glia and IMS are growing together. I want to grow with, other med tech, other med device startups. And, I'll kind of go back a step and say, I came from the medical device field. I worked for 2 large orthopedic conglomerates, and I worked for a decent sized, now pretty large pharmaceutical company that focused in orthopedics and, podiatry and that kind of musculoskeletal specialty. So really focused on that space. And I really like partnering with companies that are challenging the game, right? If you start to look at a lot of different disciplines, a lot of things are being done the exact same way until like the last few years, right? I mean, if you look at orthopedics, robotics in orthopedic surgery is exploding, right? And now you start looking at, Zimmer has Rosa, Stryker has Mako, Smith & Nephew has, I think it's called Navio or Orthotaxy, and J&J just bought Orthotaxy. So you're starting to see those companies really attack the market and kind of change the gold standard of care. And I think, selfishly for my business to get where I want it to be, latching onto those types of companies and being a partner of theirs is huge.
Well, do you find that the med tech industry in particular is something that you really are passionate about because of its opportunity to sort of help and influence, a wider space than just what it's located in?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that is kind of misconstrued, and it's kind of sales in general, right? Like as sales folks, we have a job to, push our product. But at the end of the day, what you're actually doing in sales is you are educating very educated people about a different way of doing things, right? Mm-hmm. So for instance, when I was with Stryker, the gold standard was cemented knees, right? And we've been cementing knees forever. Years ago, there was an issue with, cementless knees, but now Stryker, by way of, I think it's called Tritanium, they have this really cool product that simply gets interdigitation better than anything else. And, you go to some surgeons that have been around the block for quite some time and say, hey, listen, look at this cementless knee. And they're gonna be like, dude, I was there for the issues. Like, I'm not interested in it.
Yeah.
And, you as a med device salesperson, you have a fiduciary responsibility to, pull them aside and show them why it's beneficial. And as long as your product actually fits the bill, which, you hope it does. But I think the same thing goes with med tech, right? If these companies don't find the right talent and don't have the right leadership in place, they're not going to be able to get their product to market, right? They might have the best product or the best concept or the best design, but if they don't go get the right person to develop the right commercial strategy, or they don't get the right quality people to get them through 510K, that product might not ever make it to the market. So that's kind of where I think there's a ton of value in this industry, and it requires talented folks. I mean, you need to go out and get the right people.
And so kind of jumping off that point, do you think that your experience as in med tech has definitely informed and certainly bolstered your skill as a med tech recruiter, because you've done the job, what's needed in a lot of these spaces?
Yeah. I would say
outside of, I guess, to pivot, could someone outside of med tech device kind of do what you're doing as well?
I think anyone is totally capable of it. I think I have somewhat of an advantage because, I've carried the bag. I've been clinical with surgeons. I've been in the operating room and in limb salvage surgery. So I know the grind behind the industry. And ultimately, I was the last face of the company working with the end user, right? And when I'm working with startups, a lot of times we're working a lot more in theory and big picture and talking about, bringing on a head of commercialization. That head of commercialization a lot of times is not the person that is covering said case. Yeah. But I think my understanding of how it works at that point in time definitely helps me identify or empathize with the companies. And so it definitely has given me a leg up. And I think also when evaluating talent, being on that side of the business, I think I do a fairly good job of evaluating, candidates and their experiences and, how realistic it is, because just like anything, I mean, there's top performers and there's also bottom performers in any industry. So
how much impact do you think a top performer or a bottom performer has on the overall success of the business?
I think regardless of discipline, I think a top performer versus a low performer has a massive impact. And I will take that a step further and say, especially if you're talking about a leader, right? Mm-hmm. You can skate by as a sales rep or as a sales, mid-level manager if your product is simply that good. But a bad leader is going to be critically damaging to an organization. It is paramount that a startup goes out and gets strong leaders who are passionate about the space, who are passionate about the product that they're selling or the service that they're selling. And I think that's where a lot of companies frankly miss, right? You utilize your network, and, I think about the people I know in the space, and sure, I know, hundreds of sales reps that can go out and sell, but I promise you, if I do, an extensive search and go through that process, I'm probably going to end up hiring someone that I didn't know prior, just because they are, I always call it the purple unicorn with yellow hair. That's, kind of a Calebism there, but I think
close purple and blonde hair, but
there you go. Exactly. No, but I think it can be a tremendous impact. And that's why, one of the things that I focus on a lot of times on the sales side of things. So I would say I'm getting like blinded here. I would say about 50% of my company's practice is sales, marketing, sales leadership, marketing leadership. And a lot of times when I'm working with startups, right, and, we just got FDA clearance, or, maybe we had it a while ago, but we haven't had the splash that we want to have, right? One of the things that I always focus on is getting an absolute top tier A player, whether you want to call it a VP of sales, an executive vice president, a chief commercial officer, a head of sales, a national sales, whatever it is.
Just call it a rainmaker.
Yes, you need someone who can come in and make things happen, right? Yeah. And that person can be as valuable as going out and getting 10 territory managers across the country, because a lot of times those high level sales folks are connected with independent distributors, and they have a strong distribution channel where they can plug and play your product, and all of a sudden there's 200 people selling this across the country. So I think That's another thing where, if you miss there and you get someone who maybe has a few surgeons where, hey, we can get up to $50,000 a month really fast. And that's going to be really exciting because now we're paying the bills. But when you want to get to $150,000 a month and you've utilized said candidates' relationships, it's really hard to take that next step if they don't have that. And ultimately at this point now you've invested months and months of money, training, and most importantly, time, where now you're kind of flipping the script, starting all over and starting the search process. So I think I belabored the point, but it is very, very valuable.
Yeah, I definitely couldn't agree more. I think leadership in the startup space, in the A, B, C and round spaces, I mean, really you could say any company is tremendously important. But I've been seeing a lot lately, sort of this rise of startups coming up and their founders are not technical founders in the industry they're trying to pursue. And so you'll get like some MBAs together and they'll say, oh, let's have a great idea for this particular device in medtech, for instance, or they'll try and pursue something in biotech. And neither of them have the technical founding like expertise to kind of understand the product, understand the space. But, they've got, I guess, a business mindset, interest in building a business, but they have no sort of understanding of how the product can work. In my experience, I felt that has actually been a hindrance, not necessarily so much that you certainly need a business person on the team and you can definitely handle a lot of that side of the business. But I think having the lack of a technical founder who believes in the product and is passionate about that part of the industry, I think can be a real hindrance to some of these startups who are coming up with where the founders have no real tie to the industry, right? Yeah. I mean, have you seen that when you've been working with some of these other startups, or is it?
Yeah. So I think there's that's kind of an interesting topic because I think it's kind of a catch-22, right? Because you want someone who is passionate about the product. You want someone who believes in the product, and you want someone who, when all else fails, knows everything there is to know about this product. When you're pitching this to a VC, this is the person who knows everything there is to know. And, if all of a sudden some off the wall question comes up about, a reimbursement code or something where this, this business development guy had no idea that was even, viable. At that point in time, it's important to have that. But I would almost give you the caveat in some cases too, where a lot of times, your founder who developed the tech, who is bought in the tech, has the opposite issue where they don't know what they don't know in terms of commercialization, the business side of things. I feel like half of the companies that I talk to that are kind of in that seed or pre-seed range, and they're talking about, what it's going to take from an investment to get to FDA clearance. And you hear some numbers and you're like, it's going to take a lot more than that. It's just, and I'm not by any means on the fundraising side, but I think you have to have that happy medium, right? Yeah. And I think the best founders are the ones who are not too proud to say, hey, maybe I shouldn't be CEO once we get to a certain point in time. I want to take a step back and focus. Maybe I take a CTO role, or, maybe I take a board seat and focus on my next project, and we bring in a super business savvy CEO. Yeah. But I think you're totally right. It can work both ways. You can have a business person who doesn't understand the industry and it doesn't work out for that way. And on the other side, you can have, a tech genius who doesn't understand the commercial side of things. And ultimately, when you think of funding, right, which is this huge inflection point for a lot of companies, right? Once we get that, we can pay for X, Y, Z, and that gets us ABC, right? We're good to go. We're flying at that point, right? But a lot of times when you are talking to these VC firms, they want to know that they are making a sound and safe investment. They're going to get that ROI, right? And if there's someone who's been on the business side of things, who has gone through a couple exits, has sold a couple life science companies, and there's this super savvy tech first person, that is like the best of both worlds.
Yeah, right? It's a dream team.
I think that's what what my thoughts are on that.
Well, I think you need both. I think it's something, especially speaking from personal experience, right? Being a technical founder myself, I have a master's in neuroscience. Having to learn a lot of the business fundamentals as I go on the fly. I mean, poring over books or courses online to sort of, catch up, right? Everyone else is at this level and I'm here and I'm trying to climb the ladder. And, but for me, I love the process. I'm enjoying it. I think there's nothing else I'd rather be doing. And so for me, pursuing the business education has been like not only fundamental to my growth as a founder, but also a really enjoyable experience.
Yeah.
I know that not every technical founder is like me. Like a lot of people, they like their niche and they laser focus on it and they stay into it. And
Yeah.
there's
No, I
certainly a
agree.
spot
And
and a place for them. And but if you're trying to build a business as a solo founder, you have to learn to branch out. And I'd even go further than that. I'd say really don't start out as a solo founder. Find people, build a team, get co-founders who believe in your product as much as you do. And that's where IMS can help with that. So
yeah, no, you're totally right. I think a lot of times, especially solo founders, need to have a mentor, right?
Yeah.
They need to have someone who's been through it, because I mean, man, as a founder, first of all, you have a year's worth of emotions in like 8 hours, right? It's up, it's down, it's up,
Yeah.
it's down. It's like all of a sudden something great happened, and then 30 seconds later you get an email and you're like, crap, we're back to zero, right?
Yep.
So I think you need kind of your not to say shoulder to cry on, but you kind of need a person who's like, listen, you're doing the right thing, keep doing it. And you need, I mean, if you're a tech founder, you're going to learn these business disciplines just by it just hitting you in the face, and hopefully it's not too costly. But a lot of those things can be avoided by utilizing a mentor where you're not, effectively giving up ownership of that. I mean, everyone, you've seen the company Limitless Minds that I work with. When I was going through the process of establishing IMS with, Caleb from IPS, that was one thing that I talked at length with DJ, their chief operating officer. He was a former manager of mine, and just a guy who went off, started his own business. And, that was a person that I reached out to, and I'm like, I need your help here because I don't know what I don't know. Right. It's easy to say, I'm going to bet on myself, but like, wouldn't you rather take a more educated bet on yourself?
Yeah, no, I think the most successful and just the best founders are the ones that are humble, right? They know what they know, and they know what they don't know, and what they don't know, they seek out, right? Whether it's through a mentor or something else. And so I think the life of an entrepreneur is one that's always learning. I think is really what it is. We're not had this. I had a conversation with another advisor of mine. He joked at saying that entrepreneurs are like the real academics of the world, because they're always having to learn new things all the time. It's all self-taught. He said it much more eloquently than I did.
Sure.
But, it was.
No, it's true though. I mean, you're on probably 3 calls a week where you're talking to a person who knows considerably more about the topic than you do, and it's something where you got to be a sponge. You can't be too proud, and I mean, you use the perfect word, humble. Humility is so important, because you can sit here and you can be drowning for a couple hours over something that if you just sent one email or talked to your mentor and said, hey dude, I'm struggling with this, like, how would you handle this? How would you go about this? And it's as simple as a 5-word email back from them. So I think you have to be able to surround yourself. I use the quote all the time. I don't know who said it, but you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And it is absolutely true, right? If you're talking to, 5 guys and girls who run 9-figure businesses on even a once a month basis for 15 minutes, you are going to be in a considerably better position than just keeping your normal network of people that, you and I are younger guys, right? Not too many of our aged folks are, going through that entrepreneurial. A lot of them have the spirit, but just haven't had, the opportunity or their idea yet. So you have to latch onto those people who've been through it, or you're just drive yourself nuts. I mean, it's a roller coaster.
No, of course, it's you definitely need that support system.
Yeah, absolutely.
So kind of going from that topic and kind of where we are currently, I think as a medtech recruiter, what is your perspective on the future of medtech? So to kind of narrow it a little bit further, do you see like one specific type of like healthcare company emerging? Like our company, for instance, for example, is Neuro Health, right? We're building brain diagnostic tools. But do you see, maybe 5 to 10 years from now that brain health, mental health is really going to be the next, primary focus for med tech in kind of some of the similar ways that like mammography technology in cancer was in the 1980s and 1990s. And so, maybe the 2020s is now the age of like brain and AI, or do you think it's going towards maybe some other emerging medical field, like as you put, like orthopedics and spine,
Yeah.
or with the pandemic, you have respiratory, right? Is there a theme at all, or not really?
So I guess, my thought is not necessarily one disease state. But what I think we are starting to see, especially what we learned over the last, what is it, 21 months now,
Mm.
or 18 months now, is healthcare IT, remote patient monitoring, AI, things where we are able to comfortably diagnose patients without them necessarily coming in. There's obviously a huge push for that, right? Because the doctors still need to get their patient visits, right? I mean, that at the end of the day, hospitals are a business. They still need that, especially when you start talking private practice. But we need ways to, properly diagnose and properly provide therapy. Like you're seeing a ton of remote patient monitoring, like electrostim type
Mhm.
things, or, things of that nature. And I think, just like your guys' application where you can, diagnose patients from afar is super, super valuable, right?
Yeah.
Because that's one less patient that's coming into an unhealthy environment,
Yeah.
doing it from the safety of their home. I think that's super, super valuable. And I mean, you start thinking telehealth. I know a lot of the docs in the clinic, the Cleveland Clinic, they were seeing probably, I think, like 30 to 50% of their patients they were seeing via telehealth appointments. And I'm sure most of them were, bored because they didn't get to walk around with it, but they were so efficient, right? Because you don't, just like work from home, we have learned really rapidly that people can be more effective working from home, right?
Mhm.
You start to think about the time that you spend when you're in the office, right? You
Yeah.
go to the coffee machine, you see your buddy Jack, you talk to Jack for 15 minutes, you're walking back, you see Jill, you talk to Jill for 15 minutes. All of a sudden you just killed 30 minutes a day. I think a 15-minute break every single day of the week is a 40-hour work week at the end of the year. So when you start to factor that in, and it's the same thing with this, doctors can be way more efficient. Now there are certain things that just I don't see them being able to diagnose outside of the clinic, right? I mean, you start talking about like an ACL tear, that anterior drawer where they put their hand on the top and under the calf and pull it forward to see if if it's tracking. Things like that. I don't know how they could do it outside of it, but I think anything remote patient monitoring, any type of wearable, artificial intelligence applications that are doing diagnostics, all of those are just going to continue to explode. And I think you're going to see a lot of, the VC money continue to go there.
Yeah, it's I couldn't agree more. I think that the future of patient care is certainly largely remote. I think patients, for one, want to have control of their own health. They want more agency, right?
Mhm.
I think for a long time they haven't had that. The picture of a typical patient is, they get sick, they have to either call their doctor and set up an appointment for later in the week, and so they're sick now, but they got to wait a couple of days before they can even see their PCP. Or if it's a more acute injury, let's say they tear their ACL in a sports game or something like that, then they have to go drive to the hospital, and they'll wait at the average waiting time at a hospital is 3 hours before they even get a hospital room to
Not
see
to
even
mention
a
seeing a
nurse.
specialist, not a
Yeah.
PCP, is going to be even harder.
Yeah, so there's this long waiting game of getting from time of injury to care. So not only is that an issue for the healing process, but it's also just an issue for just the patient quality of life. Like, it just sucks.
Absolutely.
No one likes going to the doctor, man.
No.
And I think that
right.
telehealth and remote care, remote diagnostics, and remote therapy is going to be huge, and is huge for reducing a lot of those negatives associated with the doctor's office. Not to mention, I think economically it's even more viable because we can see lower premiums, we can see lower cash only patient prices, we can see I think as a whole we're moving in the right direction.
I
give up in that. I'm not entirely sure. I think there's certainly some bedside manner that we lose, or some trust potentially.
It's a caveat I was just going to say. I mean, so you talk about your typical joint replacement patient, right? They're generally, I don't know the age, and I'll probably butcher the stats, but on average, probably north of, I don't know, 65, 70 years old. And they want to have some level of comfortability with the person that is effectively opening them up and putting them under anesthesia for a lot of times a couple to 3 hours. So I think it needs to be handled in the right way.
Mhm.
I don't want to see it turn into, like ordering, Uber Eats on your phone where you're ordering a new knee.
Yeah.
But I think there is a massive economic impact that can come from it, right? And I think there's new technologies that can come out. And I think there's a lot of, ways that we can better the system without necessarily forfeiting that
Yeah.
patient physician relationship.
I think in the same way that Web 1.0 went to Web 2.0, right? We have like, the early internet in the early 2000s and kind of transitioned to like 2005, 2006, where we had Facebook and the rise of social media. And now as we move to Web 3.0, I think healthcare is going through this sort of similar metamorphosis where right now we're at the cusp of this like remote therapy, remote diagnostic space. And I think it's kind of right, in the space where things are changing and changing rapidly. And I think maybe in 5 to 10 years, we'll start to see things settle and we'll have a new norm where it's going to have a mix of at-home therapy and diagnostics with some certainly in-person care. And, the look of your clinic might change drastically from between now and then. I think to me, from what I'm seeing on the medical device and medical care space, and also my previous history of working in clinics to now, I think that it's ripe for change. And in my mind, anything is up for grabs. And I think that there hasn't been a moment like this, and I say this cautiously, but I think there hasn't been a moment like this in the American healthcare system in quite a long time. So I'm excited for the future.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think if you look at what transpired last year and the ask that we had for the hospitals, right?
Yeah.
And the things that they had to go through, if we can take elective appointments off of their plate, a lot of like PCP appointments, if we can diagnose a lot of that stuff from afar where, someone's knees hurting and they're not prepared for knee replacement and they don't need, like a viscous injection or anything like that. Like let's prescribe that person, whatever medication we need or whatever durable soft good we need to give them. But do we really need them to come in? Like I think we can limit that. So I think you're right. I think it just needs to be handled the right way. I think a lot of specialist appointments we can't really avoid. I think that needs to happen, especially when people are going under the knife. But
do you think that, kind of talking back about the previous like 18 months, do you think that the burden placed on healthcare and healthcare workers in particular has been recognized by the broader society, or we think that we just have like accepted it, like that's the job and we've moved on?
So it's kind of a tough question to answer because I think the public has recognized, because I think we realize that, they're people too, just because, someone, went and became a registered nurse or an LPN or an APP or a physician. They still have families, they still have lives too. And I think the public did and I say this cautiously as well. I think we did a fairly good job of appreciating that, especially obviously during the time, it was on the forefront of every company's, mission was to do at least something, right, to show appreciation. But, I think the industry as a whole has not done near enough. I think you see a huge, I'll call it an exodus from hospitals where, people have been there for 5-10 years and they're tired, man. They're fatigued. They got beat up this last year. And, I know a lot of hospitals lost money, but I think, that the pandemic was brutal for a lot of people, but for people that weren't affected, health-wise, none of us can even complain relative to what, our healthcare providers went through. So I don't think there will ever be enough, to be fair, to say thank you. But I really think hospitals and physician groups and ASCs, and I should take physician groups out of that, but hospitals and administrators should really be focusing on how can we give back? What can we do? Maybe we give more PTO, maybe we give more vacation, maybe we give more, raises. I know
Yeah.
that's tough to do when, they were hurting, but at the end of the day, if we don't have nurses, we don't have much,
Yeah, we
right?
really
We
don't.
need those people. We need our physicians. So there was a shortage prior to this.
Yeah.
So I think it's something where there never will be enough, but I think every hospital needs to be waking up every Monday morning saying, hey, how can we improve the lives of our HCPs? So
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. Do you think that this exodus that has kind of occurred and started to occur has, listen, in your perspective, because you're dealing with it far more often than I am, but do you see those nurses, doctors, leaving healthcare clinical practice and moving into the more, business space, kind of pursuing roles in med tech or, other similar positions where, they're not clinically practicing, but they're still performing in healthcare from the business side of things. I mean,
yeah.
there's more startups, from former doctors or from former nurses. I mean, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I think if there was ever a straw that broke the camel's back, this was it, right? And a lot of it's no new thing. A lot of physicians have been founders, right? Have started
Yeah.
businesses. A lot of, especially surgeons who, have an idea for a new plate or a new screw or a new, whatever it is. So I think that's more common on that side of things. But I think you're going to start to see a lot of nurses, and I don't do too much in this side yet, so I can't speak too highly on it, but I'm starting to see a lot more noise about companies looking for clinical managers and case managers, and they're putting an emphasis on RNs, right? Because a lot of times, I personally think RNs are wildly underpaid, right?
Yeah.
And I think that if they go to industry, I think there's a lot of money on the table for them.
Mhm.
Now, I'm not personally experiencing it because I don't necessarily deal with, the clinical management side of the business, but there's definitely a ton of opportunity there. Every company needs a chief medical officer. Every company needs, clinical case managers. They need those people, and there's a lot of opportunity, right? And, a lot of these companies are culture first, right? And when you come from a situation of working 312s thanklessly and not getting anything out of it except your paycheck, and you're actually, saving lives on a daily basis, I think there's, potentially some more fulfillment out there where they can go to a company and, create products that save lives and, be taken care of by their employer, right? But
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the same thing as truly being, patient facing, patient touching. But I think there is that opportunity out there. And I think a lot of people would feel a lot more appreciated.
That's part of the reason why I started Glia Health, is that I wanted, for my own personal life, I wanted to do something beyond just patient-facing care. I wanted to create a product that could help and impact more people than just the 8 or 10 patients I would see in a day.
Sure.
So I can definitely relate to that point. So kind of, I guess, finally, or to wrap that part up is, if someone wants to go in and become a medtech recruiter or work in the medical device field, looking to start a business, right? Any of those three things, what advice would you give them if they're brand new, starting out, haven't done anything? I mean, they're the 25-year-old who just graduated college, or, and they have an idea, or they're the young professional looking to get into recruiting. I mean, kind of, pick your example and go for it.
So there's a million avenues we can go down here. So I'll take the first one is starting a business. I think people put too much stress around time, right? Where, people will think of a year's time in their life, and it doesn't sound like that, huge deal. Like, you can go a year like that without working out, right? It'll happen just like that. It's that easy. But people will look at a year of starting a business in their basement, and they'll be like, I just too busy. I don't have a year. Like, I can't do that. So one thing, I think, I follow a guy named Rod Cleef. He is some mega multifamily millionaire. This guy does, a ton in real estate, and his famous line is take massive action. And that's one thing I can't stress enough. I was in that position. I had the golden handcuffs on. I was in a great job. Sky was the limit at Stryker. And, I wanted more, and I didn't want more from a financial aspect. I wanted more out of, fulfillment in my own career. And I
Yeah.
think if you have that itch, there's no better time than now. There's never going to be a good time.
Yep.
It's always going to be extremely stressful. Talk to your significant other, make sure your ducks are in order, make sure you guys can live off of what you're going to do. Save as much money as you possibly can, and find mentors. Absolutely. That is by far the most important thing, because there are people out there who have made every mistake that you've made. There is no reason you should have to make all of those on your own, and you're going to make mistakes. It happens. But if you have mentors, you can avoid a lot of pitfalls. And, we touched on it earlier. It is an emotional roller coaster. I think at the end of the day, it's about being consistent, right? Develop some level of KPI for yourself, your key product indicators for what do I have to do to be successful, right? And even if you have a great day and you didn't hit that number, still go do what you got to do to hit that number. If you need to reach out to, 200 people a day to sell them whatever your subscription service is, and you sold 10 straight, and it's 10 a.m. and you have 10 down,
Yeah.
don't go to lunch and call it a day.
Yeah.
Try to get those extra 190, because at some point you're going to regress to the mean. You're going to have a day where you went 0 for 200, right? And that's something where I struggled a ton, where I like to think of myself as a strong salesperson, right? And I would get on a lot of these calls and I'd have a ton of success, and I'd mail it in at 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock or whatever it was, and then nothing came out of that call. And now I'm sitting back, I'm like, you idiot, like you could have just taken one more call, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's the key to starting a business, is you have to be consistent and realistic as well. You need to, you're not going to get your business to where you want it to be in 5 years, in 1 year, right? It's just not possible, right? So being realistic, setting those realistic goals, but I think consistency is so huge. You need to determine what you can do on a daily basis to be successful, and then go out and do it every single day, no matter if the day's great, if the day's terrible, right? The next day is going to come. So you got to keep rolling.
Well, kind of in that same thought, it's like, I think you chisel your goal in stone, right? You know the end goal, what you want, but the plan to get there is pencil, right? You just got to keep making adjustments, keep changing what you need to change, keep pushing forward.
Yeah. No, you are 100% right. I think agility is huge, right? Where, I started, my business thinking that one specific discipline was going to be dynamite, right? I was thinking we were going to crush it in this specific vertical. And to be honest with you, we've had this much success in that vertical. In a space where I didn't expect to have any success has been our secretariat. I mean, it's been the end all be all for us. So I think that's a really, really good point. You have to be agile. And again, I can't stress enough, like, you need an emotional support group. Like, you really do. It's tough, man. It's tough, as you know, as well as anyone.
It's I think building a network of people, not just to get something out of them and like, what can I sell to this person, or what, how can they get them to help the business, but just getting a network of people who, care about you and you care about them authentically, where it's no longer just a business relationship, but it's a personal friendship, where
personal investment. Yeah,
exactly. And I think a lot of young founders, people that I've talked to in my day-to-day life, I'm like, they're missing it, and they need to realize that there is real value in friendship and companionship, and people to lean on, and for you to let them lean on you.
And I mean, you and I talk relatively often, right?
Yeah, I'd say at least once a week, certainly.
Yeah, and our communication started with me selling you something, right? and once you can develop that, not only business professional relationship, but where you feel personally invested, you'll start to see a lot of opportunities to help your fellow entrepreneur, your fellow founder. And I think, it's so easy to get on an island, right? Because you have this idea and you wake up and it's Glia Health, Glia Health, Glia Health, Glia Health, right? And all you can think about is the 5 million things you have to do to get to where you want to be. And it's really easy to isolate yourself. And that's just, it's no way to be. It's much more fun to, engage with people. But there's a lot of people out there who can provide a lot that you don't know. And who knows, maybe they know the person you're looking for.
Yeah.
In whatever regard. You could be looking for someone on the operation side of things. You could be looking for someone who does, FDA 510K filings for a living, and, they're looking for a side gig. You never know who people know. And I tell everyone to, I take every call that comes my way, unless it's, someone trying to sell me business insurance again. Outside of that, I take about every single call, and you don't know what is going to stem from that relationship,
I'm the same way. And actually, I was just thinking before I hopped on this, I was like, how did I meet David again? I couldn't remember what it was, because I think the relationship between us developed so naturally, and especially the way you approached it was it was not professional, but you didn't just treat me as like another sales prospect. It was a real, you tried to build a real connection. And I think that was really what stuck out to me, and really not only it served an example to me as how I reach out to people. I'm like, hey, like this was such a warm greeting, and I want to make other people feel the same way. And so I think compliments to you, David. I think no one else has done it better. So
I appreciate you saying that. One thing I want to actually go back and add to the starting a business thing is, you have to be married to your brand, right?
Yeah.
You need to set an expectation of yourself. And I fail at it every single week. And I'm sure you have spots where you too.
Yeah.
But you have to, like, just like you're starting this podcast, right? This is your second one. I'm sure you feel much more comfortable in this one than you did a week ago, right? And you'll feel much more comfortable next week than you do or right now. And I think that is something where people are so concerned about what other people are going to think of their branding, and I post on LinkedIn 3 times a week now, like I'm probably annoying these people. Like, you have to, if you want to be successful, you have to eliminate that noise, and you have to marry yourself to your brand and say, listen, I know that I'm going to annoy probably 30% of the people that follow me on LinkedIn, Instagram, social media, whatever it is. But all of a sudden you'll go from like little engagement to a lot of engagement. And then you'll have people like reaching out to you like, oh, can you teach me how to do that? And the key is just eliminate the noise and continue hitting and it's a KPI for me, right? A key product indicator. I need to post X amount of times per week. And whether that post is super, super, deep and valuable, okay, that's great. But a lot of times you just need to post, right? And make sure it fits your brand and it's not, stupid. But I think there is a ton of value in building your own brand out that way, and partnering with people to help, boost it. But
yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I think certainly I would agree more. There's definitely weeks where I'm like, man, I feel like I didn't hit it this week. Like I just, like on my own personal measurement of success, I did not meet it. But then I'll talk to some of my team and like, man, you're killing it this week. You're working your butt off. And I'm like, I didn't do it for me. Like this, you guys think I think I did really well, but to me, I didn't hit my goal. Yeah. And I think it's easy to get caught up, or it can be easy to get caught up in the accolades, saying, "Oh, you did a good job this week. Like you're leading us so well," or whatever. But it's important, at least for me. I'm always telling myself self-awareness. Like, how could you have done better? How could you have improved? What went wrong this week that you can rectify next week, right? And so I think it's always. It's almost like entrepreneurship and success in your business is like a war, in that every day you fight these battles and you're trying to win each one. And you're going to lose some of the battles, but hopefully by the end of it, by the exit, so to speak, you've won the war. And so it's like a kind of a commander general, whatever, looking at his army, looking at his previous battles from what he's fought and how he can learn to win the next ones. And so I think I couldn't agree with more with you that the KPIs are important. You got to have them. Know how to measure your own success, because if you can't measure your own success, then you'll never really know if you're headed the right direction. Because success could be anything under the sun at that point. And you can become complacent in taking little wins that really don't mean much. But you think you're on the right track. Like, oh, I have these small wins, but it's not really the wins that are going to win you the war. So
I think you're right. And I think you and I could probably sit here and talk about the trials and tribulations of startups till we're blue in the face. But I think at the end of the day, you have to set goals for yourself. You have to hit them. And sometimes you're not going to hit them, but tomorrow's going to come and you got to get up and you got to get after it again, especially if you're a solo founder. You need to be able to, drive yourself and hit those KPIs. And to go back to like the networking thing, I mean, you could set a KPI of reaching out to 5 key opinion leaders in the space every month. And maybe one of them gets on the phone with you. You never know what you're going to learn. Right. So I think we're definitely in the weeds on it, but I think it's worth it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, anyways, David, I definitely enjoyed this conversation. It was always a pleasure talking with you. What are some things going on with IMS that you want to share with my viewers and, that you'd like us to know about? Any sort of things you're involved with? How can we help?
Hey, thanks for having me on. This was fun. I think you and I could probably do 5 or 6 episodes just talking about the emotional support of startups. But yeah, I appreciate you asking. So actually right now is a pretty interesting time at IMS. We are starting to build out our remote recruiting team. So we are looking for individuals who want to come in and truly make an impact. So, and it's impactful in a few ways because we are growing. We expect to be a pretty large team in a pretty short period of time. So you're going to be making an impact in our organization, putting a stamp on our culture and helping us grow. But also, and equally important, you're going to be working with companies that are making a serious impact in patient lives. So I think that's really, really cool. I would say on a weekly basis, I talk to, 4 to 5 to 6 CEO founders or CTO founders who have this really, really cool product that once it gets to the market, it is going to help a lot of people. So I think it's a cool opportunity. I want to build a team of really, really, really amazing people. And I think that will get us to where we want to be collectively. So that's kind of where we're at. And again, man, I appreciate you coming on. I really enjoyed it.
Awesome, David. So where can anyone find you? Are you on LinkedIn? Like, where's your LinkedIn or?
Yeah. So most of my stuff just runs through LinkedIn. So I just look up Integrity Medical Search on LinkedIn. You can look me up, David Zay. Outside of that, I haven't really tied too much to the other socials. I'm trying to, I'm struggling with KPIs as it is. So I can't be doing posts on multiple or I'm going to look really bad. So LinkedIn is where we do pretty much everything. Awesome. And if you're a candidate listening to this and you're interested, jump on our website, integritymedsearch.com. And there's a submittal portfolio or a submittal platform down there where you can just punch in your name, phone number, email address, LinkedIn profile, and one of our team will reach out and see if we can find you a cool opportunity.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again, David. Again, this is the Glassmind podcast with Andrew Denton and David Zay of Glia Health and IMS. Hope you have a great week. Appreciate it.
Thanks, man.